Oh, good golly, Miss Molly. It is a auxiliary meeting today. We've had to call in a special guest, help us keep and maintain the Council of Geek, the honorable steam gentleman with our favorite guest of all time, our steam lady, our true crime expert, Miss Amelia Schwartzman. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Steam Tunnels. How you doing today?
Hey Josh, thanks so much for having me back. I'm good. How are
Well,
you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'll address the fact that I'm, in a moment, I'm struggling with the national crisis that I think we're all struggling with, which is frankly the attractiveness or lack thereof of our candy. Because I have to say, what did my grandfather's generation storm the beaches at Normandy over? If my M&Ms are not going to be DTF, as the kids say, right? What was the point? Why didn't we just like roll over and let Hitler win? That's all I'm saying is that, we had standards here in America once. And yeah, so, but, fortunately, I guess they've been put to one side and, we've managed to curtail the unattractive candy. So somehow I'm going to do my best and try and hold this together and, try and hold together what's left of America and keep the weekly habit of the steam gentleman going. I realize as I introduced you though, we need to get you a nickname. We need to find you a moniker, somewhere we can put here in the lore, right? Up in the steam tunnels.
Yeah, I need one. I feel like the guys always call me Fergie, that I'm like
Fergie.
the Fergie to your black eyed peas.
Oh, that's pretty good. I like that. I did like that. I was gonna go with use the Schwartz too. Can't go wrong with
Okay.
that either. You
Yeah,
know,
I like that too.
but they're all absolutely in that same vein. But Amelia is doing us such a solid today. Gregory is out, well, sunning himself in sunny California, having a great old time, and just sort of forgetting that all of us are here. And poor Rashawn, well, he's doing he's an Edelmensch. He's doing yeoman's work and being a great employee today, and wasn't able to break away for our usual weekly recording time. So Amelia has stepped up and given me someone to bounce off of, a little fodder to go back and forth, someone to take that with. Before we get rolling, I did want to give a little shout out to Rosalind Washington, who's been downloading a lot of our episodes, like 37 in the last 30 days. Seattle too, 21. Really appreciative of that. Woodland Hills, California, just doing an amazing job. They're up to 70. Though I saw at one point they downloaded 69 in one day. And no, I mean, I never grow up, and immediately said, nice, going on that. But yeah, Woodland Hills, man, I'm glad you're liking us. I'm glad you're getting all the, giving us the love out there and checking us out. But going on the West Coast, so some West Coast love. I even double checked. It wasn't Greg, just trying to boost our numbers out in California, but he was kind enough, to be truthful about that. But giving that shout out, giving that love to the Steam people, if you are listening, please take a moment to head on over to Apple Podcasts or iTunes and rate and review us. Help us try and climb the charts. Tell a friend. Get that, one becomes two becomes four, so forth and so on, that exponential growth that we need. And feel free to reach out to us at doyouevensteambro@gmail.com. Since we last left our heroine Amelia, she has become a mom. That is
I'm a mommy.
fantastic. Mommy, yes. How old's the little guy now?
Mikey is 12 weeks old, so
Oh,
almost 3 months. He's amazing and wonderful, and everything about him is perfect. I thought he was going to come early and be my little Libra, but he came late and is my perfect Scorpio boy. And
ooh.
I just think he's wonderful. He was born in the 46th percentile. He is now in the 97 percentile. He is huge. And so now in our house, it's is he going to play for the Sixers like daddy's team, or is he going to be on the Celtics, which is grandpa's team? So
Okay.
that's what we're going with right now. But yeah, he's wonderful and perfect, and I am enjoying every single Sleepless night with him. I love it.
I don't know if I don't know if there's much other choice. You
Yeah.
do I think you can probably settle that debate about where sleep deprivation falls, if it's torture, if it's not. It's just amazing what begins to happen to your very mind in those situations, and
Oh
I've been
yeah. Yeah.
there. It does sound like he's doing a great job at 96 percentile. He's absolutely he's eating. He's down with
He's
this.
big. He's a big boy. He's really tall. So he is almost 3 months and he is in 6 to 9 month old clothes. And we are just elated with how our big tall man.
That is fantastic. And humbly, I'm pulling for the Celtics over here
Yeah.
as the hometown boy that I am. But all right, we can, we got to understand the Eagles are headed to the Super Bowl this weekend. So you got some good Philly love going on right now, and some happiness going on there.
Yeah.
We are here. Well, we're here to talk true crime. One of your, I'd say you have two specialties. You
I
have,
was gonna say, if I'm on Steam Gentlemen, we're talking true crime or horror movies. It's one or the
okay,
other.
that is the case. Have you seen any good horror movies since we last spoke? Anything that really stood out to you?
I have not, because since we last spoke, I think I was on here like 2 weeks before I became a mom. So
Yeah.
no scary movies. I'm keeping up. There's a lot of scary true crime going on right now, though. So I'm definitely keeping up with that. These Idaho murders. I know that's what we're talking about today, but I am obsessed. I find this so interesting. My husband is ready to throw at our TV because I'm on YouTube. We have like the YouTube on the TV.
Okay. Yeah.
Every morning, I'm like, what are the updates? What do we know about him? Who's talking to him? What happened? So it's fascinating to me.
What do you find fascinating about that particular case in Idaho? I'm just curious.
That case is very interesting because he's acting, and it has all of the telltale signs of a serial killer, but it
Right.
seems to be his first murder. But first murder to go on a quadruple homicide, to stab four people, and not just anyone. These aren't like old people, young, fit people in under 15 minutes.
Wow.
Quadruple murder, stabbing, not shooting, stabbing in under 15 minutes, in and out of the house. And to get away for that long, it's incredible. Why did he do it? What's the link? Why four of them? Where does this go? It's very interesting.
It does. I've been watching it. One of my favorite podcasts is out of Idaho, up in the northern part in Coeur d'Alene. They've mentioned it in passing, and interestingly enough, they do cover a lot of true crime, not exclusively, but they do cover it. And they've mentioned it on some of their shows. They have a couple different shows, and this is down in a different area than they are at, in a bigger state than what we're used to here in Mass. So a lot of distance, but it did strike me, I thought the same as you, that it struck me almost like he was trying to be like Bundy, who started out there, who started in Washington, is believed to have a victim or two in Idaho, down into Colorado, where he got caught and then managed to escape and get all the way to Florida. And in Florida, of course, is the sorority that Bundy terrorized. And it almost seemed like he was trying to emulate that whole experience again. As you said, I
totally agree.
It's great. Now he's a PhD criminology student who's this is all alleged, mind you. We don't
PhD candidate, yes, in the criminology program. He also has a bachelor's degree in psychology. So how does this all come together? And it looks like his sisters are also involved in psychology at various levels. So why did he always want to do it? Is this like some fantasy, or is it just an obsession with one of these women that he just had to act out for that reason? We don't know. Also, how interesting is it that he used to be a heroin addict and he overcame this addiction of heroin to be a PhD candidate? I don't know about you, Josh. I do not know a lot of recovering addicts who go on from heroin to become doctors.
No, that is unusual. I've fortunately I've known some addicts who have gone on to their masters and gone, and cleaned their life up. Uh, and it's interesting that you bring that aspect up. Along on one of our earlier episodes, we talked about Israel Keys, who was coming down out of Alaska and Washington area, was initially active up there. And when I looked at the pattern that he was putting out, it almost seemed like he was acting like an addict, though of course his addiction really did seem to be these violent crimes and these murders. And much of it seemed to be a compulsion, though he was so meticulous for so long and always chose his victims very far afield from where he lived, and would go and scope it out sometimes months in advance. He would bury his supplies that he needed to perpetrate these murders, and then rebury them, and didn't tell people where they were even after he was caught. But finally, it seemed that, for lack of better terms, the addiction got the better of him, that he kidnapped and killed a barista who lived near him, was using her ATM card and PIN, and withdrawing cash and sending out. It was very different from the meticulous nature that had been the case. That, reading about some of the earlier crimes that he eventually confessed to before he killed himself, I thought there's no way you're going to catch this guy, right? It would have to be a mistake like this. And it did almost seem to be the addiction growing too much. And maybe it's, for lack of better terms, the cry for help. I don't know. I really don't, when you're talking about something this macabre, I have no real insight into it.
I mean, I hate to say it, but BTK was almost the same way. I mean, he was so meticulous for so long. And then he gets caught using a floppy disk. And he had asked them, well, if I send you a floppy disk, will you be able to catch me? Like, what the heck? Oh my gosh. Jeez.
Forgive me.
Google, right?
Forgive me for laughing, but it was sort of, I think I even saw a meme on that. It's like, no, not like, you'll be okay. Not like we're going to lie to you or anything.
It's crazy.
It's just interesting that was the moment he chose to talk. But bringing us here, and we're already in the thick of it. We're into the true crime. I wanted to talk a little bit. You'll notice, and it's not surprising when you look at the statistics, we've mentioned all men up to this point. I mean, it's really, the fact is, the statistics are clear. It's overwhelmingly with the crimes that fascinate us, and the ones that kind of go on to, well, for lack of better terms, legend or lore. Which is unfortunate, because I think there's a component to it that drives as we say, for the most part, these men. I did want to take a step back and I thought about a book I read a long time ago. I think I read it in 1999. Don't know why I remember the year, but I really do. The double nine, who knows? At that time, the book was entitled "When She Was Bad: Female Violence and the Myth of Innocence." I think it's been retitled to "How Women Get Away with Murder." And it was sort of a deeper subject matter, but I thought it was interesting. What I really found very interesting about the book was the author is an avowed feminist, and part of her treatise in the book was that, and this goes back even all the way to the original defense of Lizzie Borden, another Massachusetts crime and famous. Now remember, the evidence presented in Fall River, Massachusetts at that time is that the fairer sex, the weaker sex, would be incapable of perpetrating such a violent crime. It just was something women could not do. They were not physically able, emotionally able.
Yes, that's right.
In any way. And what the treatise of this book was sort of that can get carried on still to a certain extent today, at least, if not legally speaking, if not spoken out loud. It's the quiet part. It's often at the back of investigators' minds and or even lawyers' minds in that case. And she, to further follow it through, she said, if you want true equality, you have to accept that women too are capable of violence, maybe less often. Not statistically speaking, probably going to be the outlier, but still possible. And so she went through quite a bit quite a few examples of there. But I just kind of want to bring you on, especially being a woman in the true crime genre and industry. I kind of want to get your thoughts on it. What you think about that as a starting premise.
So I love that you brought up Lizzie Borden because I was getting ready for this episode, that's who I kept thinking about. Lizzie Borden. And what's interesting is that we have the vilification of women, which is very real, very real. But it doesn't cross over into murder. And that's what's so interesting because I think murder for people, we have this physical component. And I think that's where it draws off because prior to Lizzie Borden, still here in Massachusetts, we had the Salem witch trials where women were being persecuted, burned, just for, I mean, there's a lot of speculation on what was really going on there. But if you did anything someone didn't like, you were a witch and you were getting burned, and that was it. So we have that. When we have, and I hate to bring this up, and I'm sorry if this triggers some listeners, but if when we look at rape, up until very recently, the female victim was always to blame. Up until very recently, you wouldn't even bring up that you had been raped or assaulted at all, no matter who did it, because you were the one getting blamed. And for some reason, when it comes to murder, we as a society still don't think women are capable of it. If we don't even think women are capable of it, then when it does happen, it's an explosive story. Take Jodi Arias, for example. This beautiful woman, gorgeous, has this, salacious affair with this man. He's very successful. He's going out and doing public speaking everywhere. People love him. Travis Alexander. He had been married. They had this affair, and she killed him so brutally, so maliciously. It was as if it were like a fetish for her. I don't know. It was sadistic. I mean, really gross. And she only was caught. Why? Because she took photographs of it and then put the camera in the washer machine thinking it would erase the images, and it didn't. And that is why she was caught. I truly, honestly believe had it not been for that photographic evidence, she wouldn't have been caught. Even though they did find the handprint of her blood, I really don't believe they would have even had that much of a look at her at that point. Once they found the camera, once they had that evidence, they were then able to go through and find everything else. And she was lying, and she very clearly was exhibiting signs of being a sociopath, which is another thing we don't think women are capable of. In the age of Instagram, women can be narcissistic. It's all the selfies. It's look at me. It's I'm so beautiful. But we don't think women can cross that line to evil, because we're empathetic and we're nurturing, and we are those things. But it doesn't mean that we still can't be criminals, right? And that's true of everyone. I mean, you want to talk about the white man and how they commit the most murders, and they do. When we talk about really crazy crimes, there are, of course, outliers within that. But women can do it too. I don't know, Josh, are you familiar with the Ken and Barbie killers up in Canada?
I am. And interestingly enough, I first became familiar with them because of my wife. She is from Canada, and she was on actually one of them. I'll let you speak to it because I don't want to take away from it. But that was one of the people I sort of tossed around in my head to talk about today. So that was the first time I'd heard of them. And I think, as well, being an American, we have, I've been with my wife, gratefully now for many years. And I still sometimes joke about Canada, but in truth, the U.S. doesn't pay as much attention to Canada or Canadian news. So I hadn't really heard of them until such time. But please go ahead, continue on that.
This is such an interesting story when we talk about male versus female and murdering and horrific, I mean, really brutal, horrific crimes. So the story is it's this woman, Carla Homolka. She ends up marrying this man, Paul Ronaldo, and they're up in Canada. They're beautiful, blonde hair. That's why they got the nickname Ken and Barbie Killers. Paul actually, it had been speculated once he had been arrested that he was actually a serial rapist in another part of Canada and he had moved to get away from it. And that's where he met her. He was a very sadistic man. And turns out so was she. Well, sadistic woman. And thank God, I mean, thank God I shouldn't have said thank God, but it's amazing that they found each other because I got like so into it. Now I'm like, I can't believe I said thank God. But they did find each other and they were a match made in heaven, I guess is what I was trying to say. Because as a Valentine's Day present one year, Carla actually gave her husband her 15-year-old sister. They drugged her, Tammy Homolka, who was 15, and they drugged her and he brutally raped her to the point he murdered her, which is horrific. And she stood beside him and did it again and again with other women. They end up being convicted of 3 murders, but it's believed there are so many more. And he definitely was a serial rapist. And just both of them disgusting people. Now it comes to trial. She gets not completely off, but pretty much off because she said, I wasn't me. I wasn't a willing participant. He had me brainwashed. I was so scared for my life. There was nothing else I can do. She got a plea deal. She is out of prison right now and married and has kids and a family. This woman could be at your bake sale up in Ontario. It is wild. After she was charged, and again, you can't charge a crime twice. Then they find the video evidence that was not admissible in her trial, where she was more than an active participant. She was, some people think, the ringleader in the murders and helping get these women for her man. And that, if that doesn't show a bias there, nothing else does, because people think, how could she? How could she have been a willing participant? She must have been abused. She must have been under his spell. And there you have it. So that's a pretty big one right there.
That, well, it's kind of the, for lack of, again, often in this subject matter, it's hard to find the right words, but yeah. I almost go to gold standard, just of just everything you're talking about, right? The unwillingness to believe that the female of this, that's the folie à deux, right? The 2 people who are absolutely should never find each other somehow, through all the odds find each other, right? And somehow manage to pitch this idea to one another. Who knows who starts it, but the end result is horrific and frightening. But you're absolutely right. The bias goes towards that. You can certainly, I think you can intuit, especially when the video evidence comes out, that she was aware of that bias and was certainly, just as much as he might use any of his strengths to his defense and or in the perpetration of the crime. She is willing to do the same thing, right? She uses that vulnerability, that thought, that, and quite reasonably so, well, that she's less threatening. She's the woman. She's inviting another woman in. It's okay. Mm-hmm. It's safe. Yeah. Of course, unfortunately, it's exactly the opposite, and she's using that. Same thing at the trial. She's using that same wile and whatever means at her disposal for her defense, which is what we do in both Canada and the U.S. That's how our justice system works. That's how our society works. You're allowed to do that, for lack of better terms. But yeah, we are taking, she is taking advantage of that, and some people are very willing to do so. And it's an interesting crux, because you do bring up a valid point when you talk about rape and women who are a victim of rape. It's so terrible, right? And it's a terrible thing, and and the stigma that comes with it is equally as terrible. Yep. And for far too long, that stigma has ended up, frankly, vindicating many of the perpetrators. So you don't want to, we want to I hope, as a society, progress to a point where we're not acting like that, where we're not using this stigma, where we're not re-victimizing a woman after she's already been through all of this. But yeah, you have those outlier cases, right? And that's what's truly frightening. What I wanted to bring to the table today was to talk about Diane Downs, and she was a case in the early '80s, and she lived out in Oregon. I originally from the Phoenix, Arizona area. But here again, there is that question, and it's really hard to tell exactly how much she knew, how much is working from psychosis, how much is working from clearly there's a ton of narcissism in here. And I think it was interesting that you mentioned that women can be narcissists. But yeah, where does that narcissism start to trail on over to sociopathy and beyond to psychopathy? In her case, she was in a marriage. Now, again, we get into this sticky territory. It seems pretty clear she was in an abusive marriage. It does seem that her husband didn't really want to be married to her. He seems that he cheated on her pretty consistently, does seem to have physically and emotionally abused her, which is not a good thing. Like, no one can look at that and say, well, this is acceptable and this is a good thing. You even mentioned in Jodi Arian's case, they had a pretty toxic relationship. That's about the best I could say of it, right? He was not a great guy. Maybe the violent end he met is still not permissible under the law, but you have this toxic relationship. In her case, yes, I do believe it was an abusive relationship. I do believe he was not taking care of. Now they end up having 2 kids together, and she has a third later on with another man. And this is where it starts to get all kinds of murky and a little bit dangerous. Even as I describe this, she ended up moving to Oregon and moving in a pretty small and quiet town. And one night she comes into the emergency room and she says, I've been shot and my kids have been shot, and you need to help me right now. So they take the kids in. One of them unfortunately dies in the ER. The other 2 survive. She has a wound it's pretty impressive on her left arm, but there's all kinds of questions that already start to come out. She claims she was driving on a rural road and that a stranger flagged her down, waved her down, brought her over. And then after she speaks to him and rolls down the window, he fires into the car, hitting her, hitting the children, and then she drives off. Later on, what comes up, there was an eyewitness to her driving close by to the hospital, said she was driving 5 miles an hour, said she was driving excessively slow, which is why this eyewitness is able to remember the vehicle and got a plate number. So there's a question in the timeline already. Is she really trying, is she driving as fast as she can to get her kids to the hospital? There is a question, there's difficulty going on. The kid, we get into some real minutiae of science here. She's tested for gunshot residue. And if I'm only going from the books I read, they could say GSR. Sounds really neat and fun when you put it that way. The kids were killed with a 22 caliber weapon, or one of her children was killed with a 22 caliber weapon. And she was shot as well with a 22 caliber. One of the things that was pointed out was that when you test for gunshot residue, they are testing for rare earth minerals that exist in a primer in a cartridge, which is, I'll get a little bit geeky on you for it. Typically when a bullet is fired, a firing pin strikes the primer ignites the powder burns. My late father would be very clear on that. Powder does not explode, it burns, and bullet exits the chamber and through the barrel. There you have your crime, or at least your proper firing of a firearm. But 22 caliber weapons don't use a primer. They use what's called rim fire, which is a chemical that is put on the inside of the cartridge that will produce the spark, which will produce the burn in the powder. So when you're testing, at least at this point in the late 70s, early 80s, when they're testing her hands, the fact that there's no gunshot residue actually could have been more indicative of the fact that she used a caliber of weapon that didn't produce these rare earth minerals that they were looking for. So that's one question. There is also a question: was the gunshot self-inflicted? And then continuing on further and further, she sort of starts describing, it becomes a trope in the media of the shaggy-haired stranger who has pulled her over. And that's the alternate theory of the crime, the one that they try and present in court. A lot more evidence comes out in court. They have angles of the bullet saying that, showing that this is how the gun was fired, probably out the driver's side window, over the shoulder, working there. But truthfully, what ends up happening and what really brings it all together is her surviving daughter identifies her as the one who shot her sister and her brother. Her brother survived. Her other sister died, I believe. And if I'm mistaken on these facts, please reach out to me. I'm doing my best to recall a lot of this from memory. Now, I did just recently listen to another podcast on this as a subject, which is sort of what got me thinking. But what did surprise me and I don't have an answer for you. What was interesting was later on, she changed her stories many times, but she did apparently have relationships quite often with many men, which at this time wasn't that unusual. It really isn't anything wrong with it. But the problem is when your kids end up shot in the back seat of your car, there becomes the question of patterns of behavior and other things that are going on. During the trial, it came out that she was pregnant again. And it was very much thought that was deliberate. The podcast I listened to, which I'll steer you over to, it's called Happy Face Presents Two-Face. You can go check it out. It really, it's impossible to prove, but there was a certain amount that believed that she got pregnant on purpose, as much as you can, to elicit more sympathy. Though she came across so unsympathetic in the trial. What was famous and what became famous about this case was she knew the song that was playing on the radio when the kids were shot, which is Hungry Like a Wolf by Duran Duran. And it later on is used in a film. So as I always do like to tie this back to pop culture. It's used in a 2-part miniseries back when we used to have those all the time on ABC or CBS. And Farrah Fawcett played her. And they are, the song is played over and over again. And actually, when they play the song in court, she seems to sort of like almost, instead of being traumatized by it, instead of being terrified by it, she kind of starts nodding her head along with it, like you would have at a bar in the 80s. So it did her no favors. But that's what is amazing to me. She seems to have been in such a state that she seems to put herself so far into that level of narcissism that I think she believes her own story about what happened. It's unclear. There may have been an obsession with her ex-husband. There was apparently an affair going on with another man who may have been married, who didn't like kids. So that may have been her motivation. That's never been entirely clear, but her motivation did seem to be around men. And one of the stories she changes it to is that she was driving along and that she's flirting with this guy. The shaggy-haired stranger is now someone she's waving to and flirting, and they're kind of playing some kind of weird car game back and forth. And now he reaches into the back and she has a .22, a rifle, and that's what he shoots the kids with, right? This is where the story morphed and changed, even to that extent. And she was afraid of it, of course, of telling the true story because of loose morals as a loose woman and all of the things that go along with that. So again, it gets that kind of strange, murky place, because when I look at it, I can't dismiss her daughter, right? And it took a long time for her daughter to say that. She went through a lot of therapy. There was a time where the therapist said, why don't you just write down who did this, and then we don't have to talk about it, right? And so it was not exactly, it seems like it was done correctly. They didn't coax it. They didn't, even though they suspected her mom, they didn't bring it out. And she gave some gut-wrenching testimony in the trial. But yeah, it really was interesting. It did seem like there was still a hesitance on society's part, which is why that for a time this trial was so fantastic and so well watched, especially for a small kind of sleepy area in the Pacific Northwest at that point, where murders didn't happen, and then a murder, attempted murder of two children and a murder of one by their mother of all things. Right, that was what we and that was what was so astounding at the time, was how could a mother do this and how could that going on? But again, historically speaking, it has happened. It's the outlier, but there are these cases. There are those, and we see it. Unfortunately, there were some recent cases here in Mass and other things of infanticide, of postpartum depression, of all these, varying factors that can come to it. But we still have a hard time believing it's even a possibility, right? That's what I really still, even I was having a hard time coming to grips with it, listening to the story, and the story is well over 30 years old. So I think I really, when I hear you talk about that and just our unwillingness to, that's what fascinated me about the book and fascinates me about your point and bringing it up, is just, how do you think as a society we deal with that? Because we are also a society that's very violent towards women and objectify women and put them, and it's something that we do very, very much regularly. But how do we reconcile the need to do that better, and of course, and to not do these things, but also with the very real truth that, even if it is an outlier, it is still something that happens. I've given you a really easy question to answer, but I want to get your thoughts on that.
I feel like you just asked me like 6 questions in one.
I'm known for that. I'm certainly known for that.
I just feel like society, we just don't think women can go that far with things. We vilify women. Women can do awful things, but when it comes to physical stuff, we're unable to. And sometimes when it comes to business smarts, right? So women, for example, let's take this. Women, we aren't CEOs as often. We're paid a lot less at work, even though we typically perform higher. We're more educated, we have higher degrees, but still we keep making less. People still don't think women are as smart. We can't make these big decisions. But isn't that also why people like Anna Delvey get away with their crimes? Because then people don't think women are going to be con artists. I'm blanking on her name right now, but who is the billionaire woman with the fake drug company? What was
I can see her in my head.
Yes.
Give me yes, I know exactly, and she has the voice that is believed to be fake.
Yes.
And I'll think about it. Yeah, I will think about it. But yes, no, she clearly perfect, and clearly was using that whole
Elizabeth Holmes.
Yes, thank you, Elizabeth
Holmes.
And she clearly used that, and you see when you see the documentaries on her, you see the men who were investing in her company were sort of like, well, she was, I never thought, there's no way I ever thought that she could do any of these.
She was beautiful. She was blonde. She had nice lipstick. There's no way she could be this mastermind, this criminal mastermind. That's just not how we look at women. And it's especially not how we look at beautiful women. If a woman is kind of ratty and ragged, and maybe they're on drugs, if they're a prostitute, you take someone like the woman from Monster, Eileen Wuornos. I mean, when you look at her, she looks like, okay, maybe she could kill 6 men, right? But when you look at someone like, again, Jodi Arias, she doesn't fit the profile, because there isn't a profile when it comes to female murderers, because it just doesn't happen that often. I often watch these shows about they have like the body cam shows where it shows crimes that are on body cam, and it's almost always the hitman is hired by the wife. That's how it is. The women have someone else do our crimes, or we poison. and it's when it comes to brutal stabbings, it comes to this really atrocious stuff. We just don't think women are capable of it. But women can do anything just as well as men.
I think that was the end point that this book was making, was that if you truly want to accept that, and you truly want to have a society of equals, if that is if that is a central tenet of feminism, then you do have to accept that, right? That
Yep.
in fact, it can happen. It is possible. And to not hold on to an outdated view, going back to where we started. That you can't go back to the 19th century view that Lizzie Borden couldn't have possibly killed her parents. It's impossible, right? She just couldn't have lifted the axe, a dainty little thing, right? Just those tiny hands. There's no way she could have swung the axe with with that much presumed anger, which when you actually start to look into it, she had a lot of reason to be, she had reason to be angry, right? There's all kinds of theories. There's all kinds of deals, whether it was more coming from her, whether it was coming from abuse, whether it was trying to hide a same-sex relationship. There's a lot of questions we may never answer, but that passion that was there's a lot of possible theories that explain it. But again, at that point in time, a jury in Massachusetts was not going to hear it. Was going to just block it out as a possibility.
We're not going to hear it. But if she had had a same-sex affair, she could have been a witch. And that's the strangeness of the whole thing.
Wow. I didn't even think about that. It is a strange, it's so true though. Like, I was joking, and I'm glad I brought up the M&M's joke at the beginning of the show, because it does relate, right? What's the real crime, right? The M&M wearing Crocs, right? Or in this case, she had a same-sex relationship. It's actually in 19th century Massachusetts, right? That's a problem. And that's such a problem. People may not even be willing to go there. They may not even be willing to submit that into evidence, right? The idea that she could not only murder, but that, my heavens, to Murgatroyd, she could have an attraction to another woman, and they might have been having an intimate and romantic relationship, and that the murder may have stemmed from just too much, right? And I think you put your finger right on it. I find that amazing, right? Where we as a society, culturally speaking, right, we go to those places like, well, wait, we can't go there. A woman can't be doing that. There's no way. No. So it's a game. I like to hope we progressed and we have some ideas in some ways, but we got a long way to go, without a doubt. So, well, Amelia, I really thank you for coming out and talking about one of your favorite subjects. I know you have a new project going on right now. Do you not? I'm stumbling on it, but it's on YouTube, I think.
I do. It's like slow to start. I'm like starting it, and then I have a baby and a husband, and I'm like trying to figure in a business. Don't forget about that. So I'm like trying to get it all done. But yeah, it's called Sixth House Wellness. That's Sixth, SIXTH. And we're talking about energy work over there and crystals and home improvement. And we'll see what happens with it. There could be a new crystal store on the South Shore that's in the works. That could go with it. I have not fully made my mind up yet if that is just too crazy with everything else going on, but we'll see. So if you like energy work or, witchcraft, then join me over there at Sixth House Wellness on YouTube and Instagram.
Well, I want to make sure you plug your pluggables. One thing I do want to stress about Amelia and how I met her. She's an entrepreneur and a fabulous manager and a businesswoman. Owns a great. If you're in Massachusetts and you're swinging by the Wellesley Hills area, please come on by. Go to Crepeberry. There's some excellent crepes. I'm rather fond of the Nutella and banana. I promised my youngest son that I'm going to bring him over at some point because he's a pancake guy. But I've told him
the whole crew.
I would like to. Yeah. My oldest, whom I love to death, he's the type who just is not adventurous. He's got about 6 staple foods and that's it. And that's no comment on anybody's cooking. That's just this kid, he's locked it. Whereas my younger is, wow, what's that? He's just a foodie, right? If he one day comes to me and says, Dad, I want to open up a cafe or a restaurant, I won't be that surprised because he's at least willing to try. He may not love everything, but he's the one. And also the one when you're eating, he'll kind of come up, you gonna finish that? Can I have some? So he's willing to try. But I definitely did want to plug your pluggables there, as the saying goes, and make sure that you get a chance. And I want to help you get that start to a project, especially if there's a crystal shop going in there. But you take your time. You're a new mama. There's a lot to get used to. I've been a new dad a couple times, and it changes, but the hits keep on coming. The sleep pattern starts to change, and I have a suspicion that's gonna start to happen for you soon, especially with you describing that weight gain and that percentile. I know it sounds impossible right now, but
it's one of those things where, he can wake up 3 times a night or 1 time a night. I don't go back to sleep as fast as he does.
Absolutely. But like I say, just a suspicion. Don't want to jinx it. Don't want to put any pressure on you in that way. But sounds like it's all heading in exactly the right direction. You got a healthy child. While I have you here, do follow us on our socials. Do you even Steam Bro on Instagram? Seeing lots of love going out there. The Steam Gentleman podcast on Facebook, all sorts of love and fun going on there. I find it's funny to see what hits. I put out a lot of different memes just to keep you guys engaged, and a lot of different stories and fun stuff like that. Try and pump up other artists and then keep you coming back to the show here. It's a small, I know it can take some time, but please rate and review on iTunes. We always can need the help. We always want to get out there and help climb the charts and try and work our way up there. So I don't know, we can quit our day jobs. I really want to quit our day jobs and get Rashawn out of here. He's doing a great, like I say, he's doing a great job for the company he works for, but I want to steal him. I fully admit that. And really, the goal is to hawk fake Viagra and mattresses and meals brought to your door and therapy. What is it we're trying to say here with the podcasting advertising audience? What is it we're trying to sell? I don't know. It seems to be a pattern forming there, but I hope what I usually ask my fellow co-hosts, what do you got going on for the rest of the week? So I'll shoot that back to you, even though this is the unscripted part of the show.
I have a baby all week. I wish I had something more exciting. But I don't. I'm gonna be, if you come by Friday, I'll be making crepes there. I'm working out a lot. You guys will be proud of me. I'm working out a lot. I didn't work out for a long time. You know what, if you're listening to this, if you're a new mom or you know someone who's a mom and you live in Massachusetts, fit Partum and Hingham. They're great. They work out. Yeah, it's a very, very challenging, hard weightlifting course for women who are pregnant or who just had a baby. So it's my life right now.
That is, hey, honestly, I salute you. It's not easy. It's not easy under any circumstances. It's really not easy when you're sleep deprived, and 3 months out from having a baby. So good for you, though. I do hope it's making you feel better and helping as much as it can. There's no perfect solutions, but most of the people listening to the show know that I'm a fitness guy. So is Rashawn. So certainly a part of the life and lifestyle. But I'm glad to hear you're doing that. So fantastic. That's great. Well, I really thank you for coming and sitting in with us today, so we can get a show out to the Steam people. We love them. We want to keep them. Engaged and keep them in with the show. So I will, throughout, we will be having you back as anytime you want to come back, and we do mean that. So we'll keep throwing that out to you because we love having you on.
I loved last week's episode, and you guys said you were going to do more 90s music, and I love 90s music. So have me back for that. I'd love to talk. You guys missed a whole genre of girl rock, 90s girl rock.
I will text Rashawn after Amelia and I were texting before the show, getting ready to to tape this episode. And I said Rashad will be in hives because he hates when he misses things and he always feels like he's missing things. But yeah, you're right. That yeah, we really didn't get into enough Alanis Morissette. There was a lot that was just I think about Sass Jordan. I really loved her. I thought she was fantastic, and they didn't get enough airplay. And my brief time on air at Emerson, I managed to when I did the blues show, I managed to sneak her in there as much of the rotation as I could because she had a bluesy sound to it. So a lot of good music there. That yeah, we always feel like we never get to it all. Like we want to get to it, but we try and keep the show to about an hour because we know you only got so much time on your commute or so much time in your workout. So we try and keep it in that. But thank you. Well, it's good to know that you're ready to talk 90s music because boy, if you listen to that episode, we're always ready to talk about that. One of my favorite eras of music for sure.
Cool. Awesome. Right. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Josh. This is so much fun. And I can't wait to come back with the whole crew.
We look forward to it. And as I say, thank you for sitting down with me today. Until next time, this is your friend Josh the Birdman, sitting in with Amelia Schwartzman. Use the Schwartz, or what was your other moniker there?
Fergie.
Fergie. I'm going with, I think Fergie's better. I'm going with it. I think we got to go with Fergie, but we can put it out there. I'll put out a poll, but our very own Fergie here sitting down with us. And I'm going to remind you, until next time, keep your heat up and keep your head of steam on.